Hi, I'm Wayne, one of the owners and founders of Quick Performance. There's an old saying that says that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, maybe that's not always true because I'm an old dog. I'm over 80 years old, and I'm learning some new tricks. And one of those has to do with artificial intelligence, AI. So I've been experimenting with that to see if it's of any use to Hotrodders. Those of us who like building old cars and trucks and putting bigger engines in lighter, older vehicles and that sort of thing. So I've been experimenting, and it's had some interesting results. Some of them have been very positive, and I found a couple of things that haven't worked so well, and I'll share a couple of those with you. I'm working on a personal project that's a square body C10. I'm putting an LS engine in it, of course, and I want to run electric fans. So I ask AI instead of just going to Google and saying, hey, tell me about electric fans, and all it does is bring me back a bunch of ads for fans that are for sale. I went to an artificial intelligence program and asked it a fairly long question. I said, I'm trying to put electric fans in this square body C10, and it's got an LS engine, and I want to know about how large the fans ought to be, how much CFM I need to cool an LS engine, and here's the size of the radiator I have, and what can you recommend for the size of fans, the diameter, the amount of flow, how far away from the radiator do the fans need to be if they're going to be in a shroud? Are there junkyard fans that I might use, or do I need to look at something more of a in the box, off the shelf kind of solution? And then also, how do I control those fans? I don't want them running full speed all the time. That's noisy and not useful anyway. So how do I control that? What sort of options are there for relays or speed controllers of some kind? And then how much electrical power is this going to take? How much amperage do I need? How big an alternator do I need to pull those fans and do the rest of the vehicle? So it came back with some really interesting information. It had formulas for calculating how much airflow I need and how far away the fan should, the fan should be from the radiator to make sure you get full coverage up in the corners and pulling air from all corners of the shroud and that sort of thing. So that information was really useful, and it gave me some new thoughts that I hadn't uncovered in previous research. And it had some good information about brushed fans versus brushless fans and pulse width modulation, PWM controllers versus just standard relay kind of controllers. So all of that was really useful. And I certainly learned some things from that. Well, at one point then, as AIs often will do, it asked me, would you like some more information? Would you like for me to tell you some actual suppliers of fans? And I said, well, sure, do that. And so it gave me a list, and one of those was a name I wasn't familiar with. Some of them were, like Spall and Meridyne and Durali and people like that. Those are names I was familiar with, but there was one I wasn't familiar with. So tell me some more about that. And it gave me some background on that company, and it finally said, here is a part number for the situation you've described. This would be the part number that would be appropriate for your application. So I went to that company's website, put in that part number, and it wasn't anywhere close to what AI said the specs were going to be. And it wasn't anything like the right size or the right CFM for my application. So I go back to AI and said, hey, I just went over to their website and that information doesn't seem to be correct. What's going on? And so AI answers, and this is what's amazing. I mean, obviously sometimes it feels like a real person is on the other end. It said, oh, you know what? I'm really sorry. You're absolutely right. I was incorrect. And then it said, but that's kind of a confusing website. So on one hand, I thought it was great that it apologized for giving me incorrect information, but then it was sort of whiny about, it's the website's fault. It's not my fault. So Here's the problem with artificial intelligence, though. Artificial intelligence, no matter how much programming is put into these large language models, it's never going to have the firsthand experience of pushing on a rusty nut until it finally breaks loose at the last minute and slams your fist into something really sharp. It's never going to, also, on the other side, it's never going to know the thrill and the adrenaline rush that comes from the first startup of an engine that you just put together. That sort of experience, that sort of real world intelligence, only we as human beings get to have that kind of experience and that kind of intelligence. So here's my proposal to you, is that we're in the business of selling products, obviously. We sell serpentine systems and other related things for Chevrolet engines and all kinds of vehicles. But we're also in the information business. We're in the business of giving away a lot of information, giving away the experience and the knowledge we have. So if you dial the phone number that's probably going to be here on the bottom of this screen someplace, if you dial that number, here's what you're not going to get. You're not going to get some automated answering system, something that wants you to press 7 different numbers before you get to the right department to talk to a real person. You're going to get a person. If you don't get a person immediately, it's because that person's on the phone actually talking to another customer just like you. Most likely, if you dial that number, you're going to talk to a guy named David. And David has more than 30 years of experience building hot rods. Lately he's been really into OBS trucks, the 88 to 98 Chevy trucks. He's a Firebird enthusiast. I think he's still got one of those sitting over in the corner somewhere. And don't get him started on Studebaker Hawks, because he had a whole string of those at one point. Anyway, David is the guy who knows a lot of stuff and knows the right questions to ask to help guide you in making the right decisions about what would work for you in your particular situation. So here's what I don't want you to do, is to hesitate that, well, I'm not ready to buy anything, so I don't want to bother these people. Because as hot rodders, we go through these stages. There's the sort of dreamer stage when we're just first thinking about a project, like my C10. I thought about that for a long time, played around with a lot of ideas about how I wanted to build it. And then finally, I moved into the planning stage where, okay, I've got the C10, I've got an engine. Now, how am I going to put those things together? What about wiring and plumbing and obviously serpentine systems and air conditioning hoses and all those kinds of things? So I went through that planning stage where I started putting a budget together. And then finally, it's buying time. Well, no matter which of those 3 stages you're at, you don't have to be over here in the buyer stage to give us a call. We're happy to share our information ahead of time, whether you're in the dreamer stage or just the planner stage, because we figure if we're generous with our knowledge and information and real intelligence, that when you finally do move over into the buyer stage, maybe there's a good chance you might buy something from us. So I would encourage you to do 2 things. Number 1, experiment some with artificial intelligence, AI, if you haven't already. It's pretty amazing, and I think it's going to be a tool that we hot rodders are going to find more and more useful over time. It's amazing how much hot rod kind of information seems to be already collected and stored in those programs. The second thing I would encourage you to do is give that number a call that you see there on the screen. Give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about your project. So that's my invitation to you. Start experimenting with AI and start calling us to help you with your project. Thanks for listening.